The Sober Sojourn's 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast features recovered men and women who are practicing members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do not claim to represent Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12-step program. We are friends gathered to discuss our experience in recovery. The discussions in this podcast represent our own individual experiences and opinions as of today. You can reach us at our email address, which is sobersojournspodcast@gmail.com, or on Instagram at OyveyAA and Such a Sally. We would love to hear from you. Our aim is to try to be helpful by sharing the realities of our recovery, how we have recovered and are trudging the road of happy destiny wherever we go.
Pirate Mike and OyveyAA presents The Sober Sojourns, 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast.
Hello. Good to see you again. This is Pirate Mike.
Hi, I'm OyveyAA.
And we're back on Sober Sojourns. I totally messed that up. And you were relying on me to take off smoothly, but here we are.
Well, it was our damn fault because English is not my first language and it's not your first language, right? Or
It's my
is
first
it
language.
correct to say? Is it?
But it's okay because everybody's surprised whenever they hear that. But yeah, and so I know that one of the things I'm trying to convince you to do is a future episode where we talk about that, because I have met several people who say the same thing. Like, since English is something that they learned when they think or dream or whatever like that, it's an entirely different language and culture that's in their head. And I don't have a waking appreciation for whatever that switch is like. It's very fascinating to me. But that's not what we're talking about.
I mean, but it is interesting though. I do have to touch on that. I don't know. Yes, you're 100% right, but also I just use it as an excuse when I make mistakes or when I fuck up and things I say. I'm like, oh no, I didn't mean it like that. Sometimes I
Right.
say things and they sound a certain way, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's actually not the way I meant. But at this point, me saying my English isn't like my first language, it's just an excuse. I'm just tired, right? Like, I've been speaking English all day and I told you, oh, I'm so tired of speaking English the whole day. No, you're just tired. Like, it's not, I don't know how much computing power it takes, but I guess we'll see by the end of this episode.
Yeah. It's not the first time I've had that conversation. And so this episode is, we rolled the dice, spun the bottle, whatever you want to, the scientific way of selecting our topics, right? And so we're going with Minority Report, which came out of a conversation that we had before. And I think it does kind of pivot off or tangent off of what we're talking about here. So I've mentioned a few times, how I grew up in an international school and English is my first language. And so, for example, moving from the Philippines to the US, I fully expected that I would be able to integrate into culture seamlessly, because in my head, I'm like, I speak like you and I think like you and we watch the same content or whatever. And so we'll be able to get along. But, that is not the case. And this extends to my recovery experience, wherein I often forgot that when I walk into a room filled with people of another race and color, they see me as being very different, and I'm marginally aware of our differences, but I don't see it quite as drastically as they do. And it happens here too. Actually, I'll just, for the language thing, I'll talk like this to people that I know in the fellowship here, and just talk, kind of like one of our other friends. I'll speak really fast when I'm excited. And then one friend I remember said that she was kind of exhausted at the end of the conversation. She's like, I've been trying to catch up and think about what you're saying in English for so long, and I'm getting tired. And I was like, oh, that's a thing.
It's
Funny. And it happens in the States too, but similar to what you're saying, I'll talk, and then there are phrases or ways of using even English here that I guess don't translate in the US. And I think I'm speaking like pure American English, but I'm not. They're like, why would you say things in like a certain way? You know, like
Yeah.
that's not a thing here.
Yeah. I mean, we are planning to do like the translations of the Big Book episode at some
Mm.
point because it is a fascinating thing, and anyone who knows me knows I'm a language and like just I'm a nerd when it comes to linguistics. But yeah, it seems like there's the cultural gap. Even if you do speak perfect English, which you do because it's your first language, and shame on me, you know. But then you just have other people's perception of you, and you become something that you kind of never knew you were. I don't know
Mm.
if I can explain it really. I think, oh God, this is gonna be like a heavy episode. Even though I just want to make jokes, can I just make a joke? Can I just say, like, when you talk, like the only thing I notice now is your soundproofing.
Oh, that's fine.
Do you want to explain why the soundproofing is so important for me and for our friendship?
Why is it important? Oh, why is it important to you? I think because it's been a running joke, like for the time in the time that we've known each other, you've probably seen it in a certain stage of like incomplete,
Mm-hmm.
and you've mercilessly teased me about that at a
Publicly and
public
well,
level. Yeah, exactly.
in a quite a public level. Um,
And I've completed the
yeah.
project, so it was the inspiration I needed, apparently.
No, you did, and I feel God in that, you know, for sure, 100%. But what I do wonder now, as I'm looking at Pirate Mike's soundproofing, and you can look at yourself through Zoom the way you look right now. Do you feel like there's
Often.
more missing? You look at yourself often. No, listen, don't you think there's more missing here on top and on the bottom, or?
I From a practical perspective, I don't. And if we zoom
Mm-hmm.
out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to this entire office, all you'd see is like this strip of soundproofing in one area or across one wall, and that's it. I guess I could
Mm-hmm.
go like a level up or a level down, but then it'll just get in the way. What I mean is I will literally be bumping into soundproofing panels, and that's not really what I want. Oh, I'm so happy. This is gonna fuck with you forever. I can
It's
shift the
just,
camera.
I don't know. Let me tell you, just look at your copy of the Serenity Prayer that is out of frame, but I know is there.
It's hidden just out of frame.
And you just see what comes up for you, you know. I had a sponsor ask me what you know, how do you, he asked me a few days ago. And yes, I sponsor men, fuck you. I literally had this old timer come up to me and be like, as I was doing a 12-step conversation with someone, and he interrupted the conversation. And he was like, "Men sponsor men and women sponsor women." I'm like, okay.
Bullshit.
He literally did that, dude. Anyway, the point of the story is, regardless of my resentment, which I, you know, you do for comms about, but is that he asked me, oh, like how do you meet God? And I'm like, well, you know, it's your own personal thing. So I'm like, whatever it comes to your soundproofing, you know, it's your own thing between yourself and God, and whoever is listening to this podcast, you know, that this is an ongoing issue.
Yes.
And we're gonna address it. But what is this episode about again? I feel like
Every time you're bothered by my soundproofing, just remember that there are three fingers pointed back at you at all times.
can we do a whole weird AA slogans, but with like finger movements, like
Do
with hand
that.
movements,
You can do
you
that.
know? Oh man.
My favorite now is the knife hand because that counteracts that slogan so easily. Because it's like when I do this and I speak to you, not
Oh,
only
like
is
an
it
open
authority,
palm.
right? There are no fucking fingers pointed back at me ever. And so it is fully it's fully
And
yours
also,
to receive.
you can also do the little fist with the thumb, and then you're like Asian Barack Obama.
Oh
And
yeah,
never
yeah,
mind.
yeah. I get it. I get it.
High
Asian Barack
five.
Obama. How dare you?
Dude, we're way past that
I
point.
could I could I'm gonna start trying to work that in, even though it's useless in this podcast, unless we start releasing the video.
I love that I felt like I I felt like, oh, this is becoming too serious too quick. Let me just talk about your soundproofing for 5 minutes. Okay, but let me get back on topic. I do think
Mm.
that I had the experience where I don't know how to explain it. Like, yes, you feel very foreign, right? You all of a sudden become a minority, but it almost strengthened my identity. Um, do you did you experience that in the
Strengthen.
States, or was it trying to like, do you find yourself trying to integrate, which I think we all do, right? But there's this other thing where I feel like it strengthened my identity, the fact that I was all of a sudden the minority and I had to strengthen my identity as a Jewish woman. And I feel like I
Huh.
feel way more Jewish than I felt back home, which is interesting.
How and why? I'm so curious.
Well, I think in Israel, because the majority of the people who live in Israel are Jewish, you kind of take it for granted that the country and everything about it is kind of, can suit that lifestyle. And then when I left, I was like, oh, it made me feel more like that part of myself. And I had to actively work on it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I can actually relate. Ties in this thing like experiences that I shared in previous episodes, like to try to debunk the myths, so to speak, about what it's like to live and grow up in the Philippines, like when I'm abroad, right? That strengthened my identity in a sense because I was like, no, actually it's not like this. Like living here is this way, or Filipinos are that way.
Hmm.
And and so yeah, like at the same time that I'm integrating into whatever larger society that is, like in the US, I'm also solidifying my identity as a person from another country. I think so. And it's weird, right? It comes out in little ways. Like I was talking to somebody here about some tattoo work that I got, right? Like some,
You have
right?
tattoos?
Some, just a little bit. And they're like,
Yeah.
why, you know, like why did you get those ones, which were more in like a Filipino tribal style? And it was difficult for them to understand. I was like, well, I was living abroad for so long, and you want to call it homesickness or something. Like I just wanted to solidify my identity in a way, and market, because it's something that I'm interested in. And they're like, okay. So it's almost like I'm having a conversation with somebody in the Philippines about having Filipino tribal tattoos, and they don't understand why I would do that to myself when I'm living on mother soil. But it makes so much
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
It made so much sense when I was an immigrant, at least in my head.
The tattoo thing makes me laugh because when you're Jewish, you're like you're not allowed to get them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have them, right? It's
What does that
fine.
mean? Somebody told me I can't be buried in like a proper cemetery, and I was like, that's okay because I'm not Jewish.
Yeah. God, I just feel like it's true, but it's also false. Like it's not, yeah.
It's true, but
Like
it's
it
also
really
false.
yeah, like all things in life, it
Mm,
depends on where and when and circumstances, and it's mostly, yeah, no, it's fine. I'll be buried with the rest of my family. It's okay. I'm gonna be fine. Soon, I hope, if I don't have more coffee, but um soon if I don't have more coffee. You see, it's the English. It's happening. But no, I get what you're saying. There's a thing of the strengthened, right? As I mentioned, like the strengthened identity,
mm,
um, the wanting to be closer to it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't fully understand why you want to be closer to it now that you're there, right? If you're in America, but no, I don't know. I feel like again, you have a different experience because you're back home. I've
yeah.
not been back home in a long time. I've been missing it though, I have to say. Not the time to go,
Not
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 the
the
time
time
to
to
go.
go. Not the time to
No,
go.
I don't think so. Um, and also there's this other thing, right, which is important to mention. It's a whole other topic, which is the trying to integrate part. So I don't remember. Oh, I shared this with our friend John. Barleycorn.
Mm.
That I think I talked to him about this. I might be, you know what? I'm not sure, but I shared with someone that I grew up, maybe this was you, that I grew up learning that if I'm abroad or outside of Israel, I shouldn't speak Hebrew.
Yes, I remember
Did I
that.
say this to you?
Yeah, like
Did I
basically
just
outside of Israel, like you said that they encourage you to speak English so you weren't targeted. I think that was the word you used, which is very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I love that I just confused you with John Barleycorn. Um, it's because
I
you
see
both look
why.
so much alike.
I know. See, this is my point. People will should not be able to tell the difference between us at any time because I'm exactly the same.
I know. Right. So, so there's that, right? Like there's the whole aspect of actually you have to integrate, and it was kind of bestowed upon me, that kind of education as
Mm,
as a very young girl. And there's, there's the language thing, right? Of not speaking. Like even today, I was in an Uber and I was talking to my mom on the phone, and my mom knows that if I call her from an Uber, I'm gonna speak in English, and she's gonna speak Hebrew on the other end because I don't want the driver, whoever he is, to hear me speak Hebrew. And that's not paranoia. You might call it paranoia, you might call it Jewish trauma, generational trauma,
mm.
whatever. But like it's very clear when I speak that I'm from a part of the world, a very specific part of the world. Even though Americans, I think it's Spanish, which we mentioned in the podcast.
Or Irish, right?
Or
Or
Irish.
British.
It's the R. It's fun. It's a funny thing. So yeah, there's definitely that part, and you can't really hide from it, right? Because I have an
Mm.
accent. People here in the tropics in Central America, they think I'm American. You know, I use a
Yeah.
fake name in an Uber. I never use my Hebrew name because it's
Mm.
very Hebrew sounding. It's OyveyAA. That's why it's
Right. That's what it is.
it's very Jewish. Always use a fake name, always. But in America, they immediately can tell, unlike here with the accent that they think I'm from America, they immediately tell I'm not from there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Same.
yeah, really.
Yeah. It hasn't been presented to me often, but enough times where like I remember sitting I was at work talking to our CFO and out of nowhere she just says, "Where's this accent from? I can't place it." And so that started off this whole
Mhm.
conversation of like, I have an accent. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am delusional, right? I am sure I speak like I'm from, Cali from the Valley, whatever. But I know I don't. I really try to sound American sometimes, but I can't. But with you, it's very hard to kind of pinpoint. When I talked to you for, the first several times we talked, I was 100% sure you're from California. Um, but what's interesting? When I speak Hebrew, um, some people are like, when I speak, speak to Israelis, they're like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
have a bit of an accent." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up!" And it fucks with my head, right?
Yeah.
Because like, where do I belong in this? Like I had weird reactions from Israelis being like, "Why do you speak English so well?" And at this point, I just tell them, I just lie. I just say, "Oh, my mom's from the States."
Yeah.
Whatever, because they can't seem to like grasp whatever trilingual power or whatever. I just
Yeah.
I make excuses.
No. It's a very real thing. And I think that we do actually occupy the same space in that respect. And this episode just became less minority report and more about like third culture report, because that's kind of what
Hmm.
that's what you're describing. Same way. I mean, I'm not fluent by any means in Filipino, so people can tell, right? And most of it, like many people seem to be surprised when I just start speaking in the native tongue because they assume I'm Japanese or something here. Um, but yeah, so it's like, okay, so I'm not as
Why?
seamlessly American or English as I think I am when I'm there,
Yeah.
but then I'm clearly also not, seamlessly Filipino when I'm here. And so it's somewhere in between. And while I don't have the same um experience of like cultural trauma, I guess, where some of the things that you grew up with like stem from. I can relate in the sense that the reason why English is my first language is because my parents deliberately did not want to teach me Filipino. And
You
it
see,
gets,
that's fucking wild though.
it's wild, and it gets more confusing because they didn't, when I asked them why, I've never received a clear answer.
Hmm.
But it was more like, it started off with, and I remember this as a kid, they're like, okay, we're not going to teach you Filipino or speak to you in Filipino because it's going to affect your English. It's going to affect your English accent and your ability to speak English clearly. And so my natural assumption, right, is like, oh, you want me to speak English clearly because you're like, you want me to go to the US or something? And then they'll be like, and then they said, no, that wasn't necessarily our plan. So it's like, okay, so you're creating and raising this hybrid child, but you have no reason why other than that you don't. There were a lot of, they didn't want me to be Filipino. Dad
Mhm.
did, because that's what, when you say that you were encouraged to speak English outside of um Israel, in that sense, like I did get a lot of speak like this, don't carry this habit. This is a bad Filipino habit, don't do that.
Hmm.
So it was almost the opposite. I was discouraged from being whatever pet peeves they had about, natives here.
That's, I don't know.
It's
I
wild,
say it's
huh?
fucking wild because it's fucking wild. Like it's very different from my experience, but it's one of those things I'm like, I can't comprehend, and I feel like I won't comprehend unless I spend like 6 months in Philippines. You know what I mean? I feel like it's something that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's more, it's deeply rooted in the culture, and it's something that has probably a lot of nuances, that like the
I think
English
so.
vibe, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like the colonial after effect. Oh, so maybe it is rooted in trauma, but
We go back to colonialism, huh?
it is because, okay, to put it, I mean, I guess in blunter terms, my father is not the first and only Filipino that I've ever met who seems to want to like, it comes from this almost like self-hate where they want to
Mm.
be as far away from how they see Filipinos being as they possibly can. Whether that's, in dress, speak, appearance, um, wealth,
Mhm.
that separation.
I mean, I can relate to that. I think in a way, and I don't know what came up for me as you were speaking about some of these things is that there is, at least what I feel, and when it comes to like third culture, I feel like after you live in a place for a while, like live in it,
Mm,
um, that there's a sense of you have to find certainty in this like very changing, very foreign kind of thing that you're experiencing. I don't know. Like I had to, like, I really wanted to find myself inside that thing because, right? Because it's like, it's kind of that thing of like, who am I? Right? Am I this person, that what's my home? Right? What's my home?
right.
I've been living in this country for this and that amount of years. I've been talking this language for this and that amount of years. I barely speak my native language, whatever, which is certainly the case for me. Um, and I'm like, oh, okay, so who am I? And that's the way where I found, oh, I'm like, I was more connected to my Judaism during these years than I was connected to my identity as an Israeli, which are interconnected, right? Um, Israel and Judaism.
Yeah.
Um, but there was this kind of, okay, let me take a step back from this and explore this identity that can exist also outside of Israel. What is it even like being Jewish outside of Israel? And that's been an interesting experience, and yet, you try to integrate, right? There's this whole conversations that I'm having with myself almost every day of like, are you wearing your Star of David? Are you not?
Oh,
And
really? Oh,
that's,
wow.
dude, every fucking morning I look at my little Star of David and I'm like, And I feel like it's just an ongoing conversation.
Oh,
Um,
it's not a simple
and
matter of like, am I going to adorn myself with this? There's more substance behind it. Okay.
yeah, it's totally like, do I it's a matter of, honestly, it's at this point a matter of feeling safe, you know. But like this thing, it makes me feel safe, you know. This thing is a part of me. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of so many things for me. It's you know, like I had friends, you know, who told me when I was traveling, wear a cross. I'm like, I'm not gonna go that far, you know. I'm not gonna wear my Star David, but I'm not gonna wear a cross to integrate. I traveled in certain places. I had friends, yeah, just fucking buy a cross necklace,
Interesting.
you know. Because you can discern at some point, once you talk to me, once you meet me, or once you look at me well enough, you're like, oh, she's Jewish, you know. And you can definitely make the discussion of what is it to be Jewish, you know. Some people, you know, stupidly, I would say, think it's a religion, and that's just misunderstanding history. It's an ethno religion, right?
Yeah.
And my ethnicity, and I can certainly tell, you know, when a person is Jewish, you know. So why can't other people? And if other people can't, they'll just stick a star, a yellow, you know, star on you, like Hitler did. So I always have that in my head,
Mm,
always when I'm in a place, even in a fucking meeting, you know. I've had times in meetings where I felt just like, oh, I can't share about this or that, you know. I can't share about my alcoholism here, my whatever. I've had many experiences like that, and I'm sure, you know, if I had them where people can't discern I'm Jewish for the first time, then they meet me, then I'm sure you've had those experiences, right?
but it comes back to safety for you. Is that correct? Like
Yeah, I would
that's
say
where,
safety is a lot of things, but yeah.
yeah, no, that's a big distinction. I have had experiences like what you said, you know, in the sense of I've been um aware in meetings before where it's like, okay, I can't talk about this because people aren't going to relate, or you know, they didn't grow up there, so they're not going to understand that it's not a big deal. Um, so it was more about that. It was more about finding points to relate, maybe not getting the empathy or whatever, because
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
different experience. But to avoid talking about it or to choose to talk about something because it's also related to a sense of safety, like that's heavy. So even with a cross, is it, I'm trying to, because that's not something that I've ever experienced, right? Like when you've been encouraged to buy a cross, was that to somehow like, okay, so when you speak, people will understand that you're Jewish, but if they see the cross, then you'll be safe. Like, is that it? Was it a countermeasure or no? Was there, it's not that drastic.
I don't know. I felt like when
Like,
I've
why did they want
had,
you to wear a cross?
first of all, it never came from someone who is Christian or Catholic. It always came from other Jewish friends,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
who know that I'm traveling or know that I'm going to this place and that place, and are suggesting. If I were to get it from Christian, I'd be like, yeah, okay,
So
take a
yeah,
step back,
yeah.
Mister. See ya. Yeah. um, I think it's just a matter of safety and blending in the crowd. You know, I live in a very much predominantly very Catholic country.
Hmm.
Um, um, but yeah, there's certain places where you go to where I listen. When you're Jewish, except if you're in Israel, you are always the minority. People think we're like 200. It's only like what, 15 million Jews in the world. It's like one of the smallest religions. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
and they're either like in New York or in Israel.
in Israel.
So there's always that minority thing, right? Even though if you throw a rock somewhere abroad, you'll probably hit an Israeli. It's very much in the culture to travel. But don't throw a rock at Israelis.
Yeah, yeah, let's
I'm
not.
not condoning that. Yeah, just
I mean,
that.
I lived in LA for the most of the time I was there, so it's not, you know, I
Oh, am
don't
I
have
not
the
the first
experience.
Israeli you meet?
You are not,
Am I
you
not the
are,
first
I'm
Israeli you
sorry to
meet? Okay.
disappoint you, love, but
Fuck.
you are not the first Israeli that I've met.
I know LA is crawling with Israelis, Miami as well. But no, it's very much I guess that the US
Yeah,
Israel connection is very much real. But yeah.
but they make
Yeah,
a
no, I
distinction.
don't, yeah.
They make a
What?
distinction too, because um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, right. So it's like even meeting Jewish people from like who grew up in California and then ones who grew up in Israel, like the ones who grew up from Israel have always been very quick to tell me that we are not the same.
You see, it's again that thing of like, we have to make distinctions. We're obviously the minority in this situation. First of all, the American Jews and the Israeli Jews is a whole other topic that I can talk about.
I'm trying to draw you out. I don't know if you're sensing that.
Yeah, please. I can tell. I don't want to, because you know what's going to happen if I talk about this. I'm just going to end up talking about food again, because that's the main thing that comes up for me. But I literally had a friend tell me, and not just another friend tell me, which is the rabbi's wife, and I'm friends with rabbis. It's fine. It's okay. They both told me, you seem one more American Jewish than Israeli. I'm like, oh, I guess. I don't know. I make a mean shakshuka. I guess I am Israeli. But what are we talking about again? Minority Report?
I
Yeah.
think we're kind of there though.
Yeah, I guess this is it. I don't know, man. I've embraced it. It also, there's the whole part of it. I don't know if you got this. I cannot wait to hear you talk about this.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, you're exotic.
Yes. Very rare. I mean, usually it's about the women, right? Like people will like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I love Filipino women. They're so exotic. But maybe like one or two times
Oh.
that descriptor has been applied to me, and it's strange.
Sorry, I meant when you said about the women, I'm like, yeah, it's like the women you dated. I didn't think about Filipino women because I've had that with men,
Yeah.
certainly. Of like, oh, you're so exotic. And I'm like, I never grew up thinking I was exotic, but let me just spice up the accent here if it's doing anything for you.
No, that's actually
Whatever.
happened. No, that's actually happened. Like in the sense that like, dating people in the yeah, like dating one American person in particular that I can think of, because other than that, it's been other minorities, right? But um it was very clear that I don't even know how to like this is a person who was she always dated outside of her race. And so there was that shock value, if you want to call it that, that her family was kind of used to. And I was just like the latest minority that was coming to Thanksgiving.
Oh, Vey, listen. I have so much to say about this, but this is just gonna become a whole dating podcast.
But it
Oh
goes
my
both
God.
ways. But it does go both
Oh
ways,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, 100%. I have first of all, I can say I don't appreciate men fetishizing me or whatever, but
Yeah,
then like I keep dating fucking foreigners, so to speak, so I'm
so
the
to speak.
problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Not so to speak,
Yeah.
very, very much. Not so to speak. My mom tells me I need to date a rabbi. I tell her I don't want a fucking rabbi. If you're a rabbi with a green card, you know
Maybe.
where to find
Yeah.
me.
We'll consider it.
Oh man. Oh, it's so funny what you said. Yeah, I've had that. I've had I can't talk about it, but uh I've had how do I talk about this without um
Listen, Vay, it's our podcast. You can say whatever you want and then choose to
no, I
edit it or
know.
not.
I know. Just like I've certainly had the experience of, am I another minority on your list?
Yeah.
Like poor, your middle America mother or whatever, you're bringing another,
Yeah,
person with a name that she can't pronounce, which is OyveyAA,
right.
hashtag OyveyAA.
Hashtag.
I was born with a hashtag. It's a common practice in the Middle East
Mm.
to put a hashtag.
Except it's called pound there. Or whatever.
Don't know. I don't know, the British fuck everything up. And
You're
that's a
we're
fact.
very close. We're very close to having another conversation though that goes into gender, right? Because we can talk about this, the objectification of like our heritage or our culture, but I know it's a very different experience being like a woman and being fetishized in that way as being like just like the token Asian boy that somebody like is bringing. It doesn't, it yeah, it doesn't bother me in the same way.
First of all, I don't like
Yeah.
that you assume that I'm a woman. I identify as the fourth edition of the Big Book.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a millennial, so I'm very stuck in like binary concepts.
I know. I keep reminding myself every morning I wake up, I say Modani, which is the Jewish prayer. The first thing you say in the morning, you thank Hashem, you thank God for bringing your soul back into your body, and then I think, oh right, Pirate Mike's not a millennial. Pirate
Yeah,
Mike's not a
yeah.
millennial. And I said that 5 times, and then I continue on my day. Sorry, you were saying?
And then I appear for a podcast recording because that's what we do.
Yes, it's
Five
my
times
it's my
incantation.
magical powers. We have
Yeah,
established that I'm a voodoo queen on our, personal conversations,
we have. Yeah,
which we don't record
voodoo
yet.
is a lesser known practice in Israel, but
It's fine. We have free speech there, kind of.
you said something in an episode once, and I'm just gonna say it. Like,
Okay.
you said that when you've attended meetings, you get received like people read you as white, or people have read you as white,
I feel so uncomfortable doing that conversation because I
right?
feel like it's
Which is like the
I
opposite
feel
of my experience, where like I'm walking in just kind of assuming that I'm gonna be read as white, and I'm not.
dude, but that's the thing. That's exactly what we're talking about. You're used to a majority experience,
Yes, yes,
or whatever. Even though even in your own country, you're mentioning, especially when it comes to the English, and the
yeah.
fact that you have lived in the States for years on end, that you experience that. But this is exactly what we're talking about. It's like, oh, like I'm actually, not this thing. Sometimes it makes me feel like a special snowflake, as every sponsor in the world likes to say.
Like in a good way.
Um, no, I mean, I don't know,
No.
maybe. I don't know. I guess you have to embrace it, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it's like, I don't know. I just like, oh, like you're an American. You know what I mean? You're from the United States. That's how I look at. I don't know. I'm like, how strong's your passport? I guess that's my level of judgment. That's how I judge people. I don't know.
So it's a surprise to you when other people receive or read you in a certain way.
Okay, let me get serious. It's just it comes back to, I think, the cultural thing,
Mm.
right? And how there are certain just ways of thinking that are just, they're not gonna fly, right? Like I'm in a Catholic country. Sunday is a day of rest, and always for me Sunday is go go go, because Saturday is a day of rest. Um, so there's just certain things that are engraved, I think, at least I can speak for myself, that don't really change. And I think that the understanding of oh god, I'm so uncomfortable, the understanding of race,
Mhm.
um where I'm from, or at least the way I grew up, is different than what people what's the word I'm looking for, like kind of talk to me about or project to me about, because that's their own idea of race.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
what are
yeah,
the questions again? Are Jews white?
yeah. Exactly.
Is that the question?
No, no, no. I'm not saying that. I remember when you were
Okay.
saying that you were being read as white, then that was your joke. Was like,
Is that
so
what I
this
said?
this 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 goes into this whole topic of like, are Jews white? And we didn't resolve it, and I don't expect to resolve it here. But I mean, that's the
Okay.
experience.
I feel like there's great resources if people actually want to talk about this, right? But the main thing that I think needs to be understood here is context, especially historical context, as I mentioned, about what is race and what is black and white. And we cannot put, I think, our modern ideas or our very Americanized ideas on, I mean, sometimes we just do, right? Especially
Yeah.
if we live in a certain place. But I don't feel like that's fair, because that's not what it is in that context.
Oh yeah.
No, technically, no. Jews are not white.
No, no, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
like
yeah,
no,
for
because
sure.
if we talk about race the way in the context, no. Do I look pale as fuck? Yeah, but I don't think of race in, oh God, in terms of black and white. I don't know. I'm digging myself into a
I
big
know. And actually,
hole.
it's really interesting because like they can't see, but in this moment, you're actually darker than I am. And that's gonna blow somebody's mind.
I think I got a nice
You
beach tan.
did. Yeah, it's like a nice honey tone beach tan. Good for
There we
you.
go. I know, slay.
Um,
But yeah,
so we're talking about things and you know, I think you get pretty close to it when you talk about like the American eyes or I forget how you phrase it, but that's basically it, right? It's the I'm not Wikipedia, wink wink, like I'm not an authority, so I'm not gonna like,
yeah,
but from my personal experience and just my imagination, I think that it's close to that. So when you're talking, I think of like um, you know, the history of immigration into that country, and people needed to be checked into a certain box and categorized in a certain way in order to come in. And I think that kind of
yeah,
spills over, right? So there's always what are you? Are you this box or are you that box? That's just ingrained in the culture in a different way, but also a similar way here. When I talk about things of like, you know, whether it's my dad or other people who want to separate themselves from their identity, which you said, you know, like it's not something, it's a foreign concept to you, but that also comes from the history. You know, I not speaking as an authority, but for me, it makes sense that after 300 years of colonialism, where like only people who look a certain way or come from a certain place are able to enjoy wealth, you know,
mm,
when that is granted, you know, to certain people of that actual country, then the separation starts. You know, I don't want to be like everybody else. Like I want to enjoy the privilege that these other people do. I want to be closer to them. I don't want to be down here. I want to be up there. And over generations and years, that becomes part of a thing for people from that country too. So it's the history, right? The perspective is framed by historical context.
yeah. No, maybe it is all about, generational trauma, or at least you're informed, but what your, great 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 grandparent, bestowed upon you or whatever. But I don't have great grandparents, so it's fine. Uh, I'm allowed. Listen, don't look at me like this. I'm allowed to make those jokes. Um, oh man.
I don't know how far back I can go. Like we'll just go back to that slave name joke, right? Like I don't know where this comes from.
I don't know who gave this. I don't know what this slave name is. It's
Somebody
my
thought it was
slave
a good
name.
idea. That
I
I think I'm, like Pirate Mike may be closer to the truth than I am aware
then you care to
sometimes.
admit. You are saved on my phone as Pirate Mike. I hope you know that.
That will bring me so much joy in the days to come.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
Oh man.
One of the things that before we started recording, right, you were like, I don't know how we're going to tie recovery into this discussion of being a minority, but I think we kind of did, especially when you're saying how you didn't share about certain things because you um for whatever reason. And that made me think about early recovery for me. Mostly so one of the slogans that I got over and over again, and I think it's because all my sponsors were white, was the like look for the similarities, not the differences. It was always about looking for the similarities and not the differences. And I know where it's coming from. It's this and it makes sense, like this idea of like Pirate Mike, like don't be so conscious of your obvious differences from like the other white people in this meeting so that you miss out on the solution, right? Like don't let those distinctions um take you away from what I've come to know is a universal idea. um but it can be very difficult, or it has been before, difficult for me not to let that get in the way, because it does present an obstacle in the way that I'm able to express. Separate topic completely about how much I should be allowed to express myself in a meeting of Alcoholics
Yeah.
Anonymous, right? But
Probably zero in
probably
terms of
zero.
actual self-expression.
But like as a newcomer, it was really important to me.
Yeah.
And when I'm constantly filtering what I have to say because I think it's going to be taken a certain way, um, that affects the experience of it.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. But you know, you're saying, I've heard that a lot, right? The similarities, not the differences. And I agree. When you're a newcomer, I understand where they're coming from, but also, uh, the differences are not, you know, less wonderful than the similarities. And the differences are what allows
Mm.
me to, you know, have um, kind of an individual sense of self, right? Unity, 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 whatever, group conscience, whatever, the newcomer. My individual experience, you know, ties into, obviously, you know, it's, I don't know if I'm saying this the way I want to kind of, or the way I'm trying to express what I'm feeling around this, but like, yeah, I am different, and maybe this contributes to my relationship with God.
Oh, I love that.
You know, maybe this is a part of me, you know, it's that thing of don't take away from people's spiritual experience, right? So it's, to me, it's one of those like, yeah, right? Like, what does that mean in my relationship with God, that I am alone in this country where I know, you know, five people? You know, it comes back to this, because it always comes back around to God. And for me, there's a sense of, okay, I am not from my country here. I am, I'm not in my country. I am in this place. Um, and I better embrace it, because it's an experience not everyone gets to have, right? First of all, and also I love it and I embrace it fully and wholeheartedly. There's parts of it which I don't like, right? And I joke about that, but also like, yeah, like I'm here with God, you know, let's go, you know, kind of thing.
Mm.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? I miss my family a lot. I even miss my country, which is a lot for me to say, because I have this thing about going back home and I feel like I'm building a future in another country, and there's so much that I'm putting into it, you know, and putting into building that basis for my sobriety and my recovery and my life with my higher power. Um, but I miss my country. I miss yesterday I thought about the Wailing Wall. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I would have never in my life would have felt yearning to go pray at the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, in if I was in Israel right now. You know, so there's that, and everything can kind of exist at once. Um, yeah. Are you happy that you're back home now?
That is maybe the most profound question in all the episodes so far. Am I happy? I'm happy in my present. Um, because if I just think about like am I, you know, no, if it's just the fact that I'm at home, um, no, because my idea of home isn't tied to just one place, you know.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
For years when I was over there, you know, I thought of the connection that I have with the land here, not necessarily the people or the culture, but the land. I
Yeah,
think for
yeah.
me, it always goes back to that. And then living here, it's like, okay, satisfied the fulfillment of being closer to the land, but I still feel very foreign. And and so I miss the US, and you and I have talked about this, but like I miss things like the structure that they have there. It was easier for me to like I'm more familiar with it, but I miss the land.
Ah, dude, you hit the nail on the head there for me. Because, like, I don't know how to talk about these kind of things sometimes without sounding like an utter asshole, right? Honestly, like, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily, I miss certain people, right? But I don't know if I miss the whole thing. Like, there's a
Mm,
yearning for the land, for like um, the land, or like the view of your youth, right? The pictures of your youth where you grew up.
yes.
But then I don't think I necessarily, when I'm there, last time I was there, I can certainly say I didn't feel, oh, you know, I'm at home, whatever. Because home, again, if your higher power goes with you wherever you go, then what is home, right?
Yeah.
Is it where I don't even know what it is, you know, is it where your family is? Is it where you have meaningful experiences? Is it where you rent? Because if it's where you rent, I have homes in about like 20 different, you know, because I've rented places. So it's like sometimes I feel, so for example, here's a good one. Like I went to the beach like you know, a week ago just for a vacation. And I used to live on the beach here, and
Hmm.
it felt like a homecoming. Literally driving on that road, going back to the beach, I'm like, I'm home again. I wasn't born there. You know what I mean? But I'm like, I'm gonna see all my friends, and I'm gonna go to this place, and I'm gonna sit here, and I'm gonna, you know, whatever. Um, so I guess it was an inevitable thing to get to if we're talking about Minority Report, right? If we're talking about being from one country and going to the other, and who are you and what are your roots, right? Rooted but you flow kind of thing. I don't know.
No, no, what you said, and you said this before, like, wherever you are, if God is with you, right? So am I happy that I am home? I think that it took coming home and the experiences that I've had since then to get me to a point where in the present, I am more wholehearted than I've ever been. And it's not necessarily because I'm in a certain place, but because of like where I am in my relationship to God and how that connects to um like me feeling I have a more solid identity of who I am as a person or whatever. Like it's all coming together.
I mean, very beautiful. Is it like, do you feel happy because you're next to a like a Jollibee near you?
I am, although I think
I had to
it's
Google the
yeah,
word.
the Jollibee. I am. It does feel nice to have a Jollibee next to me, but then what feels even better is that the McDonald's is a little closer. So
I
do with that
bet.
what you will.
I mean, I guess home is where food is, and it always comes back to that with
Yeah.
me, right? I don't know. I don't know. You can't really find kosher kosher food here. It's a whole mess.
It's a big deal. I'm not as, and we've talked about this. I don't like and I think I've said like in this podcast that sometimes I see the passion with which you talk and think about food, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could feel that way. But while I can't speak as enthusiastically as a foodie as you can, here's one for you that comes with food. Like
Hmm.
my marriage to my previous marriage to an American, one of the big reasons why it fell apart was over food.
We're gonna have to cut this podcast at some point so we
Yeah.
can so I can hear that full story.
No, because we weren't on the same page with food. And I felt as if I was dramatic and drinking, right? So the word was, it felt like I was now forbidden from eating, like I'd never had Filipino food again because it wasn't something that they were into. And that became a big fucking deal. As much as I'm not that much of a foodie, like that was a big deal.
Oh man. I don't know. I can't imagine that version of you. What did you say? Like drunk and dramatic trademark?
Drunk and dramatic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Drunk and dramatic Mike.
don't know.
Dad Mike.
That part, Mike. No, but I mean the food thing, I mean, I will touch on it a little bit that obviously is that it's like it's a little bit of home with you, right? When you
Hmm.
cook certain foods and you eat certain foods, I can say to you that everything that I know how to cook and I cook on a regular basis is just what my mom cooks. It's a worse version, a much worse version of my mom's cooking because I'm just trying to recreate what she cooks, so I'll feel at home, you know.
Yeah.
But when I did go home, it was like a year and a half ago or whatever. I'm like, oh mom, can you make this thing? Can you make me this thing? And I'm like, this snack and that
Yeah.
snack.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's a big part of it, right? When I find like an Israeli snack or something
Yeah.
somewhere, oh my God, and it costs like a lot, right? Because it's like imported or whatever. I'm like, oh great, like I love this fucking thing. Um,
That's a part of home. That's a big part of home. I don't need to be a
Yeah.
food snob. I guess that's my point. Like, I don't need to be, I don't actually need to be a food snob to appreciate food. Like, just knowing that I can
That felt like a jab in
eat
the
it.
stomach. Oh, man.
I struggle
I
with
don't
it.
know. What, with food?
Well, yeah, because I'm like, should I be more like should I be more distinguishing? Like, is that well, because separate podcast about insecurity, but it's like, should this stuff actually matter? But
Yeah.
that's beside the point. It's I do, there's a joy that comes out of eating food that I love, have a connection to, just having it in my life can be very comforting.
Yeah, I feel like it's a big part of like, as I told you, like that thing I carry with me. Yeah, I carry my heart power with me, but also probably a jar of tahini or whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, that goes
Said
with me
like that.
everywhere.
Tahini. Did you say tahini?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm speaking American English. Should I switch? Should we do an episode in Spanish? But honestly, it seems like I don't know. It seems like it's easier to be Jewish in the US. That it's like it's very easy to be Jewish in Israel and it's very easy to be Jewish in the US because all I literally had a conversation with this with the rabbi. I'm like, oh, it's so easy in the US. Everything is kosher, everything is checked, everything is
Hmm.
like perfect. Like, uh, I wish it's such a nightmare outside of those two
Really?
places. I feel like, yeah.
Oh, because in the US it's like it's organized, like it has its place and it's properly like shelved or whatever. Is that what you mean? Like the access is you
It's
don't have to think about it.
it's yeah, here it's impossible to get. And also there like almost everything is kosher, you know?
Yeah.
Like companies make things kosher, like they have the incentive, they have the clientele. And apparently he told me that people think kosher food is like healthier, which I'm like, that makes no fucking sense, but it's not the worst Jewish stereotype.
Yes. I've heard
Explain
that.
this to me.
I
Why?
can't explain. I can't explain at all
That's so
because
weird.
I don't have like full knowledge of how we consider like how food is considered kosher. But I have heard that like, oh, and you eat kosher, it's healthier for you. And so it's like, and then then you're just parroting, and I hear a lot of people, oh yeah, yeah, because you eat kosher and it's healthy for you.
Interesting. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. How can you, yeah. What else is a thing? I mean, a big thing for me that I found that I've been doing lately is that okay, wherever I go, I'm gonna have a mezuzah on my door, which is that thing that Jewish people have on their doors. I don't know,
Uh, uh,
fucking
uh.
Google it. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
care.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't refer to you. I was referring to the whoever is gonna listen to this podcast, the three people who listen to this regularly, which is like you and my mom or whatever. I don't think my
Yeah,
mom listens to this podcast. Hi, mom. If you are listening to the podcast episode, I love
right.
you. I miss you.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, John. Thanks, Joby.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't even know if they listen to it regularly
They
on a
don't.
regular basis. No, they really don't. Yeah, so like having that little reminder on my door has been a big thing. Even though here it's the same thing. I was super happy when I saw that the mezuzah is hidden by how my door frame is built.
Oh,
Because I'm like, oh great, it's in. I'm like, oh God, you're such a bad Jew. Like being embarrassed or whatever. You should be proud and stuff like that. Or not embarrassed or like scared. I'm not embarrassed. Um, Embarrassment won't kill you. Not that I know.
hmm. That was loaded.
I
I'm wondering
mean,
whether to jump on that or not. But it's not the point. The point, your point is, yeah, it comes from a place of safety again.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a thing. I can talk about it because it's things I still talk to myself about and to some friends. It's not like a thing that's like definitive for me. I think it's something that changes. I think it's quite normal given like everything to just like be like, like do I become do I do I allow myself and embrace the the minority thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
or don't I, because I am the minority and I am whatever. And maybe there's a very clear correct answer, the justice, yes, I will be whatever, I will be the most Jewish I can, and I believe that and I appreciate people who do that, but I'm a person and I get scared and I have my own kind of insecurities. and it's very fear driven, and like I think it's normal to just be like, okay, I don't know. I'm gonna talk to God about it. I'm gonna allow myself to feel everything I'm feeling around it.
Yeah.
About being, is minority is the word, right? Like when you're like, yeah, yeah, minority.
Yeah. I can appreciate the way you talk about it though. Like when you talk about specifically um the ease of being Jewish in the US, I don't think like it's like that for Filipinos yet. Even though there are a lot of us there, and because the ideas don't seem to be as defined. Um, even amongst ourselves. Like one of the pet peeves that I had when I was there in the States was, I would meet, like there'd be Filipino groups, right? Celebrating the culture, celebrating the identity. And a lot of times it would be like, yeah, we're Filipino, we're Pacific Islanders, right? And that's my pet peeve, actually. I'm not going to waste any time. So my pet peeve is like there's a larger than I wish there was subgroup of Filipinos who are like, yeah, we're Pacific Islanders. And it's like, do you know, like, have you looked at a map of the planet Earth? Like how close do you think we are to Samoa and Hawaii? Like
I
we're
can.
directly north of us is like Taiwan and Japan, and south is like, so we are not Pacific Islanders. We're quite firmly Asian in terms of geography. But
Interesting.
I understand this need to like reclaim or claim native culture when you're growing up far away from your native country. It's just not
Yeah.
accurate.
I mean, God, it's so funny. The whole globe thing. Um, I have a story about a globe later. We'll
Yeah.
touch base on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess all this to say is like, it's still, what does it mean to be Filipino outside of like, I like ube or mangoes and I wear certain fabrics or whatever? I think there's a lot of it that's still being defined. It feels like we're very new.
I mean, I guess it goes on to more philosophical discussion and that is, what is the I? What is the
Oh,
me?
yeah.
Um, I mean, that's what I got. Stop it. That's what I got when you were talking about
That
it.
was sincere.
Yeah, no, I do. I totally meant it in a sincere way. It's like, what is the self? Especially defined by, when it can't be defined by geographics, I guess is the word. And again, I always go back to God, whatever, God. But my point is, I think it's like, it's also like, what is your soul? Is a part of your soul? Is it where you grew up? Is it something, else? You mentioned, what makes a Filipino, right? I can be like, what makes a Tico, right? Which is Costarriciencia. What makes a person from Costa Rica, a Costa Rican, whatever. What makes an Israeli an Israeli? And that's, yeah. I think then it delves into bigger things than what you identify as and what other people identify you as. That
Yeah.
goes back to just, oh, I'm just me. Um, and I've certainly found that I prefer, um, again, I think I hold on to certain definitions, I'm a woman, I'm a woman.
You are women. Yeah.
Yes. I'm from Israel, I'm Jewish, you know, this is my belief, this is my value set. I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. Um,
But you're also a child of God. You're also one of the millions of electrons that when we're right, we're spinning around and we make a prosaic steel girder, right? And I think that's what I
God
found.
damn it.
That's what I found in recovery. And that's my full circle in this discussion is like, yeah, there are parts of self, the self-centered parts of self will have me spinning around on these questions of identity. and try to reconcile that with what I'm experiencing in the present. But when I'm confident in myself through my relationship with my higher power, through my relationship with God, then I'm home wherever I am. I'm wholehearted wherever I am.
Amen. I think that I found that, and yes, we can talk a lot about God, and I feel like we do and we did, because it is about God, and it has to go back to God. Um, but what I did find is that I prefer, even though I have all these definitions for myself that I rely on, is to just represent just me, not in relation to the country I'm from. Because I am not the ambassador of Israel. I've had many conversations with people about this. Like, people expect me to become the ambassador for Israel. I don't think anyone wants that job. I don't think anyone wants to be the ambassador of any country, because we're individuals at the end of the day. So I think a lot of the times, more, yes, there is that fear aspect, but more than that, I don't want to start A, talking about it, right? And B, just I'm just me. Let's just get to know me, they, my birth name, hashtag, rather than whatever whatever preconceived notions you have about me.
Right.
But you can't escape those preconceived notions because, again, you're not where you're from. Like, you're not at home, you're not when you were born. So all of a sudden you're expected, because you're outside of this person, to be like, hey, like, you are, yes, you are, whatever. If I was the first Israeli you would have met, maybe I would have been your blueprint for all Israelis. But unfortunately for you, that's not what happened.
I mean, I certainly didn't want to start a podcast with any of them. So there's that.
Fuck them. No, we can't end with fuck them.
Yeah, you can. Okay.
Everyone, Am Israel Chai.